That was the primary reason I started to think about additional research. Went to policy school for a couple years, really interested in the role of institutions, had worked for a foundation previously, had always been interested in issues of access and equity. Started a doctoral program in history. My dissertation was actually on essentially an intellectual history of the idea of decriminalization, right? So following, tracking conversations politically about the idea of cannabis marijuana consumption, right? Starting essentially in 1970, going through 1996. So taking the long view and thinking about the role of policymakers, politicians, and institutions, right? So I feel really privileged now because I'm in a space where I was, you know, in an ivory tower and now have the opportunity to actually implement policy, right? So the stakes are obviously higher, right? Kind of thinking about the results really matter to people who are interested in participating in the industry, so the responsibility is more significant, and I take that seriously, right? So one of the things that I do think that is really different about particularly the Bay Area is that the space for kind of policymakers to be involved, invested in progressive conversations is different, right? So when I speak in New York, when I speak in Arkansas, for example, the conversation starts in a different place, right? The space for opportunity is very different. And I know for people who are really struggling to move forward in the industry, it seems like the door is only cracked open a little bit, which is true, but there are places in which the door is closed, right? And so I think collectively it's trying to figure out how we can work together to both improve the process over time, and this is one of the things that I try to communicate as well, right? So in thinking about the long trajectory of history, right, institutions have been mobilized for 40 years to do some of this criminalization, marginalization stuff that we talked about earlier, right? And I just try to remind myself that it's not going to be 6 months to a year in which we're able to kind of fix inequity, right? And so I think at the Office of Cannabis, one of the things that's really important is that we're committed to improving the process over time, right? And working with policymakers, working with community members, working with equity applicants to both identify particular barriers and where possible to try to clear that stuff away, right? So people at least have the opportunity, right? The chance to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that's really important for us is to, you know, now it's permit processing and fee waivers, right? There are some people who are going to be able to take advantage of that and other people who say that that's not enough, right? And so in thinking about what those additional opportunities are going to be and how we can create and find additional supports, we're invested and interested in that as well, but that might take a little bit more time. So one, East Coast very different. I think the opportunity is different here. It just, you know, you have people, for example, industry leaders, not all are great actors, but some people are really committed to helping support people for the right reasons, right? Not the entire universe of folks. And there are other places in which that number is zero, right? And so I do think that we have an opportunity to work with industry, to help support folks, to think about new ways to move forward. And I'm really excited about that possibility, for sure. Yep.
Thank you. So in a follow-up question for you, Eugene, what systems is the Office of Cannabis looking to put in place to hold people accountable for the partnerships that are created? Are there ways to measure whether or not they're authentic partnerships, or how? Just like what does the Office of Cannabis stand on accountability?
For sure. So this is kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit, right? Because often these ideas are really in tension, right? So one of the things that in the Office of Cannabis, we take our responsibility very seriously around operating agreements to make sure that what you've committed to on paper is actually genuine. So much, you know, as we can in a small office, we want to really take our time and make sure that the things that you're committing to are in line with the spirit of the ordinance, right? That's not true in other places, but one of the things that kind of comes up is that increases the time for the permitting process, right? Because we really, we're looking through agreements, we're making sure the proportionate interest held is right. We're kicking back people who have buyback provisions that don't commit to, don't have anti-dilution stuff. All this stuff is really important to make sure equity applicants are realizing the opportunity that they've committed to because they have the authority to apply for the permit, right? Equity applicants essentially authorize the application, and so we want to make sure they get what's coming to them, essentially. But that takes time, right? And so for people who are really interested in moving through the process more quickly, it's challenging when we're saying, hey, it's really important for us to prioritize doing that due diligence, right? So that's one of the places in which we really take seriously our responsibility for accountability, is making sure that those documents are right, and we also have the ability, if they're not correct, the penalty of revocation of permit, right? So both to stop people from moving through the process, and also if we find out that people have not disclosed that information to us, we have the ability to take their cannabis permit away.
Thank you for that. Did that answer some questions for you guys? All right. So I wanted to open it up for questions at this point from the audience. Are there any burning questions that you have for any of the panelists that are up here? Yes.
I just had a follow-up, Eugene. You said about taking away. Is there any power that you guys have to take away bad incubators, right? People who make poor deals that are deals on purposely to mislead applicants. Is there any one bite of the apple for incubators who don't play by the right rules, and you guys find out that their partnership is bad? Is there anything that keeps them out of the program, out of the fund?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the challenge just practically to your question, Ed. So far we've only reviewed applications from equity applicants. We haven't moved on to equity incubators, right? So the formal review, in order to kind of do the analysis, the due diligence around those operating agreements to verify them, we just haven't gotten to them yet. So to kind of think about what kind of the potential penalties or issues about kind of preventing them from moving forward with other equity applicants, we haven't been able to kind of get to because we haven't reviewed those operating or those agreements in earnest. I feel like we'll have a better sense of that once we actually get into the review of that. Yeah.
Question would be for the grandfathered in operators.
Yep.
It looks like this is going to be a lot for you.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you doing to check and make sure that the community process is supposed to what community is actually happening?
Yeah.
So when they put the community piece together and they roll it up and it looked real skinny when we ran on side that site.
Yeah.
And it looked like they were doing much. Why is that when they've been there and they already afforded themselves the opportunity to already be make money?
So the question was, just so that we can keep it recorded too, is that you're asking for the operators that are already going through the process, have expanded, are moved into adult use cannabis. How are they being held accountable for the equity plans that they submitted? And how's the Office of Cannabis navigating through that?
Sure. So two things, right? The first thing that I would say is kind of having multiple responsibilities means that we're making decisions about how to prioritize our staff time, right? So if we're thinking about enforcement and dedicating resources to doing that, then we're not processing permits and we're not thinking about how to review other documents. So it's always a real challenge, but I don't say that as a cop-out. To your specific question, Kim. So one of the things that we've done is actually remove the ability for medical cannabis dispensaries to have the authorization to sell cannabis, right? So for 7 operators, because they did not meet their commitments, we actually took their ability to sell cannabis away, adult use, right? So that's one of the things that we can do. If we find out that people are not meeting their commitments, we can actually withhold their ability to sell adult use cannabis. We can't withhold their ability to sell medical cannabis because they have the permits are Article 33 permits from the Department of Public Health. But the thing that they can get from the Office of Cannabis is authorization to sell adult use. And if we find out that they are not meeting their commitments, then they are not allowed to kind of sell, their conditional ability to sell adult use can be taken away. And we have done that for 7 operators.
That's on the site?
Yeah. We've taken their equity plans down from the website. right? So once we feel like they're not meeting their commitments, they're removed, and their ability to sell adult use is taken away. Yeah, for sure.
The only reason why I'm saying that is possibly through equity groups can actually put a real equity process together.
Yeah.
Where they can actually be accountable and do something really well for the community.
Yeah, for sure. And we get that, right? Yeah, so we have quarterly progress reports that they're required to submit to the office, right, to demonstrate their progress in meeting their objectives, right? So one of the things that's really important about this process in order to leverage the commitments that medical cannabis dispensaries are making is because they're providing this support in lieu of city funding, right? And so here is one space that we can kind of create some additional resources and supports. That's why it's important, right? And also we want to make sure that they're accountable, and that's kind of our ability to make sure that they're living up to their commitments, right?
Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, I have one more question for the entire group, because I'm a, oh, Rudy.
I just want to make a comment.
Yes.
I just said, despite, man, you guys having, like, not that many staff doing the code, man, I give y'all props, man, for what you guys do. Straight up.
Straight up respect, right? This isn't an easy time period. It's a huge task. You guys have 178 applications.
I mean, and that's from equity applicants, right? That's just from equity applicants. So we have the number of permit applications is closer to about 460, right? So we have temporary permit holders, we have medical cannabis dispensaries, we have verified equity applicants, we have equity incubators in the queue. So a number of permits who have, are looking to sell cannabis, right? Whether it's manufacturing, retail, distribution, delivery, cultivation. So that's another challenge in really figuring out, because equity is making sure that people aren't carrying significant costs, right, in dealing with city bureaucracy, right? So there are a lot of challenges. It's complex. Right. We're dedicated to improving the process over time, right?
So can you give us a little update, because I know that you guys had a listening session for the community on how to advocate for the state funds that are supposed to help to provide resources for the equity program. Where are you on that timeline?
Yep. So the RFQ or the RFP has not been released yet. So currently we're in the process of passing some legislation in City Hall to essentially give us the ability to apply for the funding. Right, if it's above $5 million, there are certain procedures that have to take place. That's already been drafted and should go to committee very soon. So right now we're putting in place the systems to allow us to apply for that funding, which we plan to do very aggressively. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Just to back that up. So main thing here, if you're coming in, you're an equity applicant, you're here, you're coming into the cannabis industry, the fear of filling out a survey, the fear of doing certain things that are business, get rid of it. Fill the survey out. It's to your benefit. When Office of Cannabis sends you information, it's your job to read it and try to understand it. Do not be scared because, this looks like a lot of information. I might not. No, read through it and find somebody to help you go over it. And because this is your business now. If you want this opportunity, this is an opportunity, but you need to dive in. Because, like he said, if you want to get through the process quick, you got to work it out with your partnership first. And so when you get there, so there's no ridiculousness in the partnership, because that's just going to hold you up. And then you're going to find out you got a bad deal, and it's going to take another 6 months. So don't even get there. Get yourself educated, and that's what this is about, right? Is when he sends out an email and a survey, fill it out, read the information, show up if you can. You see the dates for different stuff. Morris is an example of an equity applicant that's always at events, and he's in the position he is right now because of that, because of being educated, because of doing all the work himself and then allocating work to other people. You know what I mean? This is a good example right here. And if you need help, your community leaders are sitting right here. You know what I mean? Reach out to those individuals that used to be your mentors or still are, like Nina. Nina Park's sitting here right here. Because probably this man right here and this man over here, and so use these people. They're here for you, and that's why they're here, And so don't be scared. Ask questions. If it sounds like the teacher says, if you think it's a stupid question, it's not, because it's about to educate you. Okay? So I just want to say that real quick.
Thank you. Straight up. Yes, Ed.
So I have a question, and this is for John and Rodney. So we're talking about the war on drugs, right? And that's what we're here about. That's what we're talking about. How do you go from being in the neighborhood and doing harm in the neighborhood to now getting folks in the same neighborhoods to embrace cannabis? Can I ask you guys, what do you guys see? Are there barriers to getting the community now, especially our older folks in the community, to embrace cannabis, to embrace the clubs, to embrace the permitting and the equity? What do you guys see as challenges to that, knowing from the background you guys came from?
Do we need the mic? First and foremost, the community that used to be here is no longer here. So when you say about buy-in from community, most of our communities have moved across the Bay and up to Northern California, right? That's the first part. But as far as, cannabis, it's wording, it's how you present. It's the same thing when we talked about information, educating equity applicants. I mean, you would think, right, this neighborhood probably has, should have at least 70% of all the verified applicants. But yet you have about less than 15% of the folks here are from this community. It's not that the community doesn't want to get educated or learn the information, it's how you present the information, right? And one thing that I can say as far as buy-in, one of the best things that our group, San Francisco Equity Group, Brother Kim Mitchell, I give him all the credit because Kim Mitchell had a vision. Brother Kim had a vision of, working in the communities and doing what we do for our communities. He brought together leaders from all different parts of the city that understand how the city works and also understand and have helped the community, right? So collectively, as a diverse group, right? And one of the main things is, going back to what Rodney said earlier, being from the community, because all of us are from the community. We understand the dynamics. We also understand all of the redevelopment that's happening, the changes that are happening in our community. And to me, with this equity program, the longer it takes, the more it's going to harm those of us that qualify, because our folks are not going to be here when it's the opportunity to go before the planning commissions and before the folks that we need in order for us to have a business, right? So going back to your question as far as getting the folks, our folks, remember, instant gratifications, right? When crack cocaine came in, going back to the war on drugs, people made money overnight. When you was up on the hill on a good day when it first started, if you coming home with less than 5 racks, 5,000 that is, for those of you who don't understand, right? You wasn't handling your business. And I'm talking about 4 to 6 hours of standing on the block, right? That, in the sense of how, just society have sold, fast money, right? Most of our folks are in that, if it's not gonna happen overnight, they're not gonna wait it out. We all been in this process, this is going, a year and a half, 2 years now, right? A lot of us have been sitting, and you figured a lot of the applicants who are not here are pretty much saying, oh man, I'm giving up on this, right? So going back to your question on buy-in, it's how we present the message. And when I say we, I'm talking about groups like SFEG, the group that's putting this on, and other groups, those folks from the community. And it's our responsibility as leaders of those communities and as spokespeople of those communities, right? I don't want to use the word leaders because you got a bunch of folks walking around, swear they're leaders of our community when they're leading themselves to the bank. No, I'm just keeping it real with you guys. And I'm hoping that equity applicants are watching this, because it is a long process. Trust me, if somebody's selling you a ticket about you're going to be rich overnight, no. You got to do the education work. But the thing is, you need to hook up with the folks that you can trust, right? There are a lot of good incubators, but some of them too, they're just like equity applicants looking for a hustle, the way to get in, right? But most of us, we're trying to do our best. And one thing that I can say about our group, being that we're diverse from different districts, which is, District 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11, and all of us have, doing community work and helping folks, collectively for over 300 years, right? We understand how the city gets down. The facade, the equity report, taking the cut and pasting, right? Most of our folks are not gonna read all that stuff. They wanna see simplicity, right? Presentations, all the graphs. Our folks don't have time for that. What they wanna know is how do I go from A, B, C, and then for me to get my business running, up and running, and for me to figure out a way to help my community besides myself, right? So getting the community's buy-in, it's easy, but it's the way you present. I heard food earlier, right? It's the best way to break bread with your folks, right? One thing about our community, folks, it's about trust. If they know you real and you from the heart, you're not just coming to put up a little gimmick because there's an opportunity presenting itself. If they know, not just today when there's an equity program, but tomorrow when it's gone, before that. See, and a lot of us are sitting in this room and a lot of us are in the city that have done this, right, are really looking forward. So going back to that word, healing. It ain't no healing until we get into business and start getting a niche for ourselves and start getting a slice of that pie to create some equity for the people that need that equity, right? Because as we sit here today, right, our politicians, right, using the equity as a facade for them to pass a lot of these little bills that don't have nothing to do with us, right? Instead of really, you're talking about some intelligent people now, right? If you that damn intelligent, let's get this process speeded up. San Francisco professing itself to be a progressive city. Come on now. We're in the hub of intelligence. Why is it taking us so long to get folks the permits? Why is the OCC understaffed? Why? We have an $11 billion budget. What do we need $5 million from the state for? Come on. So my thing is, going back to what you just said, the buy-in for our folks in the community is this: what's real? Stop giving me theories and concepts. Stop giving me timelines that I might be dead when it becomes a reality. Put it in front of my face right now, because this city has the power. San Francisco is a great city. San Francisco's got money. Let's put it to work for folks that really need it.
Anytime.
Telling the truth.
I say right now, I'm not gonna preach too long on that, but he just gave us the definition of dynamics around here.
Yeah, dynamics.
And understanding all that information John just shared, and utilizing that in the force where, hey, I know this system, I know the people within areas that have massive influence over other folks that can share knowledge, and that can go into inside another neighborhood that has a relationship with an individual that has that same type of the energy surrounding them. So those are type of methods that we utilize, that I was trained to utilize working with YCD in order to start getting folks to gravitate into city government, into city politics, into getting contractors to meet not only good faith efforts, but local hiring, requirements, from 25% to 30%. No, I'm getting tired of fighting for those type of rights, 50%. It should be totally outright 100%. And if you can't find that contractor, that individual, then we should be substitutes. I had to outsource to someone. But going back to the question, yes, it's the dynamics. And having relationships with individuals like John, myself, Rudy, Kim Mitchell, that's able to go in the community that they was actually raised from. You know what I'm saying? Now I can identify people, who's there, who's not, since it is a major out-migration of black folks here because of the job issues, because of black contractors not having contractors, because of the hike of rising in pricing of homes, and more so because of the lack of empowerment and education for that individual. So when we're able to find a way to not only communicate and articulate that to people like ourselves. You know, this is like another island. We're able to go back to that island and communicate with that to them and articulate that to them, and utilizing his expertise, your expertise, and being able to show them that visually and walk them through the process, not giving them no false hope. We're not playing with false hope around here because, again, I go back to we already been fighting for humanity, rights, freedom, and now survival. So these tactics, this wave of information that needs to be shared, because it doesn't make any sense when we have a bunch of illegal vendors right here on 3rd and Pollute, but they're good salesmen, they're good businessmen, they're good cultivators. They should be right here. Why? Because, you know, the folks that came to be didn't have no relationship to go on 3rd and Pollute and put on them boots and go talk like 3rd and Pollute and grab them a beer or something and say, hey, I got some opportunity and this is what it's gonna take. Not too many people got the heart to go out there and do that. All right, actually articulate the message to get them there. And not more importantly, you got to have something they need to see in order to believe. And those are some of the motivators that motivated me, you know what I'm saying, in order to achieve and be who I am today and be able to actually not even work with an organization that helped develop my political skill set, you know, YCD, and my community development background as well. But, you know, we was able to take a group of people to actually go back into the community that they was from, born and raised, identify those individuals that need that help, and just put it out there on a broad message and take them in, accept them as who they are, and bring them to the table and make sure they eat. And continually, while we feeding them, giving them the information, giving them hands-on skill sets, letting them be able to feel what it's going to feel like as they move on to being success. And that's where I'm at today. You know, it's been a whole year and a half dealing with this project. You still got to hustle. You still got to have a job. Oh, I was thinking in the beginning, it's been a snap. 2019 about to be my year. No, I'm still waiting. You know, I got a project passed 2 years ago, SS Access on 761 Bryant. We're still waiting for that to be a construction build-out. You know, in addition, working with Kim Mitchell, Rudy, and several other folks on a project here on Leland and Bayshore. We're still waiting on that. So, you know, we are your tentacles to go back to the community and say, hey, this is not a process that's just going to happen overnight, but it is a process that you can actually exploit your skill set and become that CEO that you want and come back and help heal your community and show them how you did it so they can actually start doing it too.
All right. And on that note, speaking about making sure everybody eats. Right. Right. And so on also a parting note, and kind of synthesizing one thing that was said multiple times here, which was that because it does take a lot of time to be able to get through the process, if we can get some assistance for our equity applicants to somehow get some help in sustaining their locations throughout that process, because like John said, is that we, you know, like he might be sitting on it, all the resources are gone, and he finally gets the okay, and it's too late, you know what I mean? And so we're trying to figure out how to avoid those situations, and I know that like we sat with a listening session, it came up over and over again, so it seems like it's a very pressing issue for the community on that point. Thank you all for being here. If we can give our panel a round of applause.